We're here to talk about Datacom APIs. I'm Ali Sadat. I'm the Senior Director of Product Management for Datacom Platforms and Business Productivity Apps. Today, I also have with me Sid Pandy, who is part of our platform team building actually some of our APIs. He's going to be showing us a demo, or two, or three. So, everybody in the right room? This is not lunch. I know it's 12 o'clock. It's a kind of weird time for a session, but it's definitely, we're not going to give you guys food, but we'll definitely give you lots of APIs and data. Just before we start, so I kind of get a sense of who's in the audience. So how many Data.com users today? Okay. How many know what Data.com is? Okay. Pretty good. Developers? Everybody can spell API? All right, few people. All right, awesome. We'll start with the customary and mandatory safe harbor. I'm sure you guys are going to see this a million times. You can probably recite it by heart. So everybody please put your hand on your heart as we're going to go through this. It's kind of like our Pledge of Allegiance. So as you know, we're a public company, so we're definitely going to be talking about future items in this session, so please don't make your judgments or make any judgments or decisions based on what we're going to tell you in this session, but make it based on what's available today. So we're going to do a quick overview of Datacom. Seems like most of you guys are familiar with it, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time, and then we're going to go into the do an overview of what we've done for the APIs, and then get into the demo. The majority of the time we're going to spend on demo and code and what we can actually do with the API. We'll wrap it up with a quick, kind of like a little bit about the Datacom APIs, limits, and kind of like gotchas they're going to be aware of, and then into a Q&A session. So Datacom is the premier source of account and contact information in Salesforce. Today, we are actually sourcing account or company information from Dun & Bradstreet, but we're also then pairing that up and complementing it with the Datacom contacts data that we actually have through our Datacom Connect application or asset. If you guys probably know this as formerly known as Jigsaw. We're bringing those together as the premier source of data to clean up your data within CRM. Really, our whole point of bringing the data into CRM is not just to bring you more data. Data can be kind of overwhelming on itself, but really what we're trying to do is bring you specific data to complement the use cases that you want to actually run within Salesforce. So we have data where you can, or functionality where you can actually go prospect and target new accounts and contacts. So you can actually go do search for new companies and contacts you want to pull in. You may want to do white space analysis in terms of what companies you've sold to, what companies you've not sold to. This could be both green, for companies that you have never sold to before that are potentially a target for you, or perhaps you sold to a company and you want to see all the other members of that family hierarchy. Kind of analyze the market and all the segments and customers that you guys have. So there's going to be a big splash, as already has, about Datacom or Salesforce Analytics Cloud. One of the things that we actually help is bring all the data and the pieces that you need to kind of then visualize your data within the Analytics Cloud. Anywhere from doing anything from planning and aligning your territories to scoring and routing leads, building revenue roll-ups. These are all the kinds of data that we actually bring into Salesforce today and integrate it with your application so they can actually run all these different business processes and use cases. One of the key value propositions of Datacom today is the fact that it's actually integrated into Salesforce. We actually have automated jobs that can actually clean your data. We also have applications and user interfaces. We can actually go do search the application and pull in, or our database and pull in the data that you need. But it is integrated. We do clean your data. You can customize the jobs to an extent. So some of you ask, well, then why am I here talking about APIs if you guys do it all? Well, we don't quite do it all. Every customer within Salesforce wants to customize their application slightly differently, and they want to do different things that we just can't anticipate and build that all into the product. And it's kind of like Salesforce tradition has been, we do most of what we think our customers want, and we definitely solicit their feedback, but at some point, customers are going to say, I want to do something different, I want the UI to be different, I actually have a totally different process that you guys couldn't have imagined, on a totally different industry. I want to be able to customize my application. I could be from a process, could be the interface itself. I want to build a mobile app. So these are all the different reasons that you would potentially need APIs. And what we've actually introduced as the core components of the Datacom APIs are two. There's search and match, and we'll get into the details of this. So in terms of the different types of use cases that you can actually build or the APIs actually support are things like creating a Datacom clean solution within Sales Console. If you've used Sales Console, you want to be able to kind of see your data all in one console and be able to clean at the same time. Search before create, it's pretty big. With the dupe management solutions that Datacom is actually rolling out, you can search before create within your org, but a lot of times you want to be able to search before create within Datacom. So before you enter the next account, you want to be able to search in Datacom. And this goes towards building actually a good quality CRM, and you want to make sure that bad data doesn't get in. The bad data doesn't get in if you allow salespeople, whoever's able to create data, be able to create it off of a good source. There's a bunch of other different use cases like auto-adding contacts upon import. So one of the customers I've heard in the past was saying that every single time I add an account, I want to make sure that that account has a couple of the key contacts added, because when a salesperson starts and wants to open up that account and actually go sell to them, who are they going to call? So give them something to kind of start with. So within the Datacom asset, we have a good list of C and exec level members, pretty much of every company out there, at least in good coverage within US. So you can actually auto-add contacts. I have customers that say as soon as you create an account, they have a trigger and goes and auto-adds contacts after that. There's cases where you want to do selective cleaning. We have clean jobs that actually run and clean your data, but we get customers that say, well, I don't want to clean these records, or I want to kind of clean them differently. Oh, can you take the data and put it in a custom object and do 5 other things to it at the same time? Those are all use cases that we don't support today within the application, but you can actually accomplish those with the APIs. And the list really goes on and on. There's a bunch of different things you can do from integrating into marketing automation to creating on-demand solutions and all kinds of mobile apps. And we'll show some of those today. So just as a level set in terms of the Datacom APIs, we have 2 different sets of APIs and 2 different products today. We have our prospecting application and we have our clean application. You primarily get a search and purchase API with our prospecting application, and you get a match API with our clean application. And we'll get into the details of how search and match are kind of, they're similar, but they're actually different in terms of how we treat them. Now, we introduced the Datacom APIs just about, I think, a year ago, last Dreamforce, about the same time we actually introduced and rolled out. We're in the middle of our pilot. One of the things that we actually did was take advantage of one of the platform capabilities that Salesforce is actually rolling out as part of the Lightning platform you hear about at Dreamforce this week. But there's this concept called external objects, and I think they're calling it Lightning connectors now. So you can actually now take connectors and build them within Apex and actually tap into, say, through OData to your SAP or other sources out there. But we actually use that same technology to actually wrap the Data.com APIs and actually expose those as their natural and native objects within your Salesforce org. So we have this grand database of 240 million accounts and 40 million contacts. They look like you're going to be within your org. You can query them. You can do everything to them other than delete and update. But they look and act like any other object within your org. So if you know REST, you know SOCL, you can kind of start working with the Data.com APIs. So let's talk about searching. So we have searching capability for 3 objects: contacts, companies, and an object that we call D&B company. Search is pretty much very similar to what you are used to today. So if you know SQL, you kind of know SOCL. If you know SOCL, you know how to search against all the 3 objects that we have. So 4 different components, really. You select the fields you want. So based on the different objects that we have all the objects within the Data.com APIs that are all called Data Cloud Contact, Data Cloud Company, and Data Cloud D&B Company. You can select the object you want. Each object obviously has a different set of fields. You can definitely do describes on them and get the list of fields that are available. If you're using a tool like Workbench we'll use, you can actually just drop those fields in and it'll show you which one to pick. Then you can actually set a filter condition, which companies or which contacts you're actually interested in. And then lastly, you can actually select a sort or order by for the result set. Now, one of the key things to kind of consider is every object actually has a different set of fields that you can actually filter. So this is where we vary a little bit from the standard objects within Salesforce. So you can't actually query every field that's available and we're returning in a result set. So one of the advices that I have is definitely look at our documentation for each for each object. You can actually see a list of fields and logical operators that are supported, and not every logical operator is supported for every field. So definitely consult with this. This is an example of the Data Cloud company object. Similar one for contacts and DMB company. DMB company actually has a limited set of fields you can actually use to query it. And it's actually initially designed as a lookup service to bring in the additional DMB fields into Salesforce, but you can actually use some of the query capabilities we have exposed to kind of query that also. So one of the things you'll notice with Search API that's a little bit different than the experience that you have in the UI today is that in the UI, when you go and search for a record, we actually show you all the fields. And we have this thing called unlimited view in the UI. But as soon as you want to add that record to your database, to your org, you actually click on it, you say export, and at that time we kind of quote unquote purchase that record with the points that you've been given as part of an individual user or list pool. Now within the APIs, I'm sure you guys all know, there's no such thing as unlimited view. Once I give you the data, there's no way to pull it back. So one of the things that we have to do within the API is to actually obfuscate certain fields. Now, we're hopefully showing you enough fields you can make a purchase decision and build a good UI, but you can't actually see all those fields to actually make a purchase decision. So in case of a contact, for example, you'll be able to see the first name, last name. You won't be able to see the title. You'll see just a domain for the email. You'll see the company, the city, state. You get a couple other fields, like if you don't see the title, you see things like department and level. They're not necessarily shown here. But you won't be able to see all of it. But hopefully this is enough for you to make a decision to buy. You'll notice on the search result when you get it back is there's a flag called is owned. If is owned is false, you basically have not purchased that record within your org, so you can't see the details. Now on the other side, if you've actually purchased that record, and it could be through the UI or through the API, you'll be able to see the entire record totally unobfuscated and clear. Like my record down below. Now, mind you, I've obfuscated some of it just for this presentation because this is real data. I don't want to just put my phone number out there. So this is just obfuscation for the slide. You'd actually see it if you just pull it out there and you purchase the record. Same thing with Allison's. I don't want to put her email out there. So now, one of the things that we've done since last Dreamforce is actually we spent some time in making the purchasing process a little simpler. It's actually was a little bit convoluted and you have to go through multiple steps. So one of the things we've done is piggyback off of an existing API pattern within Salesforce, specifically the Chatter Connect API, to make the purchase process much simpler. Before you had to do multiple inserts into different objects and pick the ID and insert it into another object. Now it's just a question of doing a search. So you do the SOQL, you get a list of IDs you want to buy, you do a post REST style to this URL, order, Data Cloud orders, you identify the type of user you have, and we have two different types of users, we have monthly and list pool. You identify the contacts that you want to buy by their ID, and once you submit that, you get a response back, and the response will actually include a URL which you then do a get against, which actually will then return all the results set for you. So this is, if you guys have used our previous purchase API, it's definitely way simpler, and it also does not have some of the challenges we had before. And one of the things that to keep in mind is when you're using an external object, you cannot have an external object be in the same transaction as you're trying to update a Salesforce object. So if you're trying to query an account object, and you're trying to write to an account object and trying to query the Data Cloud objects, you're going to get an error because it just recognizes that, hey, one's external and it doesn't want to hold up a database transaction for an external call. This will probably be the same case with the Lightning connectors. So what we've actually done with this process of wrapping this up with the Connect style APIs actually makes it much simpler. We're doing all the transaction work underneath, so you're not going to have to worry about the issues that we're having before with the purchase API. How many have used a purchase API or a process before? All right, you guys are good. A couple of other APIs that came out with the purchase API that allow you to look at a user's usage and also see how much credits they have left. So every user in Data.com has a monthly limit of 300 records typically by default that they can actually purchase records. You can actually make changes. So if you want to see how much points they have left or credits they have left on a monthly basis, or if they're part of the list pool, how many points they have left. If you want to look at the details of records that you've purchased, so if you pass the order ID to either the Data Cloud orders/order ID in companies or order ID in contacts, you can actually view that. You can retrieve specific companies using this API. Now, if you have a particular record that you bought, you can actually retrieve the details off of it, so you're not actually calling the search API anymore. And then also if you want to retrieve details on the order itself, so what you purchased, how many records, and what impact it had on the points, you can all use all this API. Going to search, going to match. Now, match is slightly different from search, and I see a lot of people using search and match kind of interchangeably. To us, they're actually very different. People a lot of times like, well, I searched for something and it matched to this. Search to us is when I want to just do a query. I'm looking for all accounts in San Francisco that are high-tech, 5,000 employees or above, revenue of X. And I'm looking for a broad list, and I want to go purchase those records. Match is about appending data to an existing record and finding a match within our data set. So you already have some information. So you may already have the account, you might already have the contact. You're trying to find that match against the data set that we have. So you start with something, and then you want to append more to it. So in a case like for Salesforce, you might have Salesforce, not the complete name. We just dropped the .com if you guys didn't notice. You have Salesforce, you have one market, SF, California, and that's about all you have. Now you're trying to match that against something that we actually have to see if we can actually clean up that data for you. So that's really what matches. Couple of different match APIs are all REST-based. These are all the different APIs that we have today. We have a Data Cloud contact and company match. Now, one of the things we've also introduced is this concept of different types of match engines. So how many are familiar with Dun & Bradstreet? Dunn's right? All right, a few people. So Dun & Bradstreet has their own match algorithm. And what we're actually doing is using their API and match algorithms to kind of expose that, so you can actually use that within Salesforce. So again, we've wrapped that up as an external object. It's exposed as a match API as the Dunn's Right Match Engine Data Cloud Company. One of the other ones that we've actually introduced, APIs that we've actually introduced with the winter release has been the social profile API. So we introduced social data to Data.com, I think over about a year and a half ago. So you can actually go do a search within Data.com, and for particular contacts, you can find their social handles. Now, up until now, those social handles were tied to the contacts that we actually had. As of this release, you can actually start finding handles for contacts we don't necessarily have within our contact asset. So we have about 50 million contacts. You can actually do search for, and you can actually find their handles, and it's a match API essentially that you're going to use. The way the API works is you can actually do a GET request against that URL, and you'll actually see what fields are available, what you can actually include in a request, what's going to be in the response, and then you actually create your API call, and you do a post to that same URL to get the response back. Let's take a look at the Dunn's Right Match API itself. So this is, as I said, it's a proxy service to the Dun & Bradstreet Dunn's Right API. Dunn's Right is actually a trademark in their proprietary matching algorithm. It's pretty high value, and it actually allows you to connect or to match against international data sets. Our typical match engine within Data.com was very much focused on English and in US. Dunsright allows you to connect, to match against their entire 240 million record data set that we actually provide. It has a couple of different features that's different than from the Data.com match. One, it allows you to provide a minimum confidence code. So when you do a match, you can come back and say, okay, well, when you're doing a match, give me a minimum, give me records that meet a minimum level of confidence. So we can come back and say, well, 80% or 90% we think that this is a match. So the way Dunsright works is actually a numeric system from I think 1 through 10. I think the minimum we can enter is 5. 10 is obviously the highest level. Some customers actually like Dunsright with 10. Most customers we found that use it around with a confidence code of 8. The other thing that I can also put into the request is the result set size. So if you put in a lower confidence code, you might actually get a lot of results back. You can actually then say, well, give me the first 5 ranked and ordered, so I can actually select from that. One of the things that Dunsright actually has as part of its response is not only the confidence code. So for every record that we return, we tell you what the confidence code is, but there's also a very proprietary match grade that comes back from Dun & Bradstreet that would actually then allow you to make further decisions. Sometimes a confidence code could be lower, but because of the match grade and the value in that, you can actually decide to accept that record or make different decisions based on that. If you're familiar with Dunsright, definitely know what I'm talking about. Now, the only thing I'll note is that the confidence code and match grade was not included in the GA of the product itself, and it was going to be available as a patch post Dreamforce, about a week, I think, week or 10 days post Dreamforce. So if you go to the APIs today and try them out, you won't see this as a result set, but you'll definitely see it within a couple of weeks. So this is what the request will look like. So we're going to actually do a post. Now, match also allows you to do a post to the long URL, or you can actually go and post to a short URL. So you can just post to the match. Within the request itself, you're actually telling us which object, the options that you want to match against, the data you want to match against, and some of the options I kind of talked about in terms of the confidence code, the match result set. So you can actually put that all in a request, construct it, and then post it, and you'll then see a response very similar to this. So we'll come back with a list of records that match that record, and we'll also identify what's different. So you may have given us Salesforce, one market, San Francisco, California. We'll come back and tell you, well, we actually found that the name was different. It's actually Salesforce.com, Inc., and it was actually one market street. So we'll actually tell you which fields we found to be different in that diff section up on top, and then the result set that's below. So a couple of things we did in winter. We introduced the Dunsright Match API. We've enhanced our search API to now be able to do search against parent DUNS. I should note that we introduced parent DUNS search in winter, but we also introduced DUNS search and global DUNS search in the summer release that allows you to kind of complete the whole hierarchy and kind of build the family tree, if you would, with those APIs. The social profile match API we talked about, the purchase API. We've improved the contact search in terms of its obfuscation capabilities. We've actually reduced the obfuscation. We used to actually obfuscate both first and last name and just show you the first initials of each. Now we actually show you the first and last name, so it's actually better. And then the other thing we also did was, if you're familiar with Datacom standard object that gets installed if you have premium, the DMB company used to not be updatable. The challenge for many people that are using the APIs is that now they've retrieved the data, they want to put it back into the object that we actually provided, and they couldn't update it. In the past, we kind of deemed that as our object, and we only updated, but now we've opened that. It's full CRUD enabled. It's a standard object. You can actually just write to it once you retrieve the data from Datacom. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Sid.
Thanks, Ali. So let's switch over to the demo now. So we're going to be covering 3 use cases today. The use cases being search before create, the second one being lead append or lead clean, and the third one being account hierarchy using parent DUNS number. So before we get started on the demo, we'll just look at Workbench and look at a couple of requests and responses through Workbench. Any of you familiar with Workbench? Okay, a couple of you in case if you're not. So Workbench is a great tool if you want to query Salesforce data using the different APIs such as Force.com APIs. You could use bulk APIs, the REST APIs. And you can even update your data through this web interface itself. So once I'm logged into this interface, what I can do is I can go to Queries, SOQL Query. And in here, I can select my object. So in this case, we talked about various objects that we have. So here, I'm going to select Data Cloud Contact. And as you can see, this shows me the list of available fields that I have in here. It has a bunch of fields. You can select each of these fields. You can even construct your SOQL query using this interface itself. So for the demo, I just have a sample query. So looking at this query, what I'm doing is I'm selecting a bunch of fields over here. And the object I'm selecting from is Data Cloud Contact. In my filter, I'm applying two filters over here by company name like Cisco and state is California. And essentially, I'm sorting by the title. And I've used a limit clause in here. So let's look at the result set. So as you can see, this is the result set I got back. You can see a couple of rows are obfuscated, indicating that these records have not been purchased yet. So you can see this field column call is owned, indicating to false. And if you just look a bit down, what you can see over here is you can see all the information regarding this contact, including the email and the title. And this shows I have purchased this record. So you can play around with your query over here. We also support the offset clause. So think of offset as a way of paginating through your queries. So here what I could specify was I could specify offset 10. And what this would do is this would give me the next 10 records. So moving on from here, search is essentially supported in both in SOQL and as a REST API. Now, moving forward in Winter 15, the purchase API has moved to a connect style API. Just to avoid any confusion, when I'm referring to Connect API over here, this is the Salesforce Connect API and not the Data.com Connect API. So you can use Connect to even view records and companies. So for example, what I'm going to do is so here what I have is I'm using the Connect API for Data Cloud. And in the URL, I'm selecting contacts. And you see a number in the URL. This number is nothing but the contact ID that we have on our tables. So if it was a company, you would use company ID. So here's the record I have to make it visible. What I'll do is I'll open up a JSON response over here. And you can see a couple of fields are obfuscated in this, indicating street, email, phone number, and the title, which implies that this record has not been purchased yet. So let's try and purchase this record. So purchase API is essentially a post for API. So this is the URL that you would use for purchase. And in the post request, what you specify is the user type and the contact IDs that you want to mention. One you want to purchase. For the user type, you're free to specify different user types, such as the monthly and the list pool. This would allow you to specify from which credits do you want to draw and purchase this record from. So let's try purchasing this record. So as you can see, we were able to successfully purchase the record. We've got an ID purchase count. You do not need to worry about it, and it has been successfully purchased. To go back and verify that a purchase went through, it's a get method. So as you can see over here now, all the fields that were obfuscated are now visible, including your email, your street, your title, and your phone number. So you can see I've successfully purchased this record. So moving on to our match queries, which are, again, available as a part of REST API. So you can use this verb match And if you do a get method on this match, what you see is three match engines that we have. Starting winter 15, we have 2 new match engines. One is the DC social profile match engine and the Duns right match engine. So using social profile match engine, you can match your social handles that include your Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter handles. For the Duns right match engine, this is the DNB Duns right matching. It is only available for Data Cloud Company. And finally, we have the Data Cloud Match Engine, which is available for matching for both accounts and contacts. So let's look at an example of Duns right match engine. So if you keep drilling in, you keep seeing what is the response you get from get. And just to go over the URL once again, what I have over here is I have match in my URL, followed by my match engine, followed by the entity I'm matching over here. And you can also specify the default match rule. This match rule is called the Duns right match rule. You can specify this in the URL. Now, we also give you what are the list of matchable fields that we'll match for you. And this can be obtained using the GET request on this URL. So let's try matching a record over here. So going through the request once more, we specify that we are matching a Data Cloud Company. That was the attribute over here. This data is the data that you want to match. This is your data. And at the end of it, you specify what are the fields that you want from this matchup. So this is the response that I've received. You can see there were no errors over here. You can see what are the fields that I've returned as different over here. So you can see that the name returned as a different and the phone returned as different. So let's see what was the name which we got back in the response. So the name we got back in the response was Partner Reinsurance Company of the US. And what did we have in the request? So in the request, we had direct property and casualty insurance carriers. So you can see all the differences are pointed out in the response itself. So moving from here, let's move to one of our demos. So what happens a lot of times is field reps, when they're creating accounts, they do not have enough information to create accounts. And that could lead to accounts with incomplete information. So think about this case when field reps or any user comes in to create an account, they are presented with this UI. And clicking on this new button, so instead of taking to a UI which would ask you to enter all the fields, you can search data.com before creating a record. So what I would do over here is, I would search for this company called BNSF Railway Company, and I'm looking for it in the state of Texas. So you can see over here, we got back a set of results. Some result sets are obfuscated, indicating they haven't been purchased yet. You can see a green dot and all the information for these records, indicating they have been purchased yet. So let's just realize that this was the account record that I was looking for. So with one simple click, you can add the account to your CRM. And as you can see, all the relevant information from data.com has already been populated, including the DUNS number over here, including your NAICS code and the SIC code itself. So you create an account with the complete information with one click. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm just going to switch back to Workbench and show you what went underneath the hood over here in this button. So essentially what we did over here was, this was a company search. So I'm just going to switch to Workbench. And so my search looked something like this. I selected a bunch of fields where the name I specified was BNSF Railway Company, and I specified my state over here. I'm applying a limit filter. So as you can see over here, I get the list of companies that are with this name, and the ones which are obfuscated, they haven't been purchased yet. The other ones have been. So moving on to here, so the next demo we have here is lead clean. So a lot of times you're on the road and you're meeting up with a lead or a prospect. And suddenly, while you're going through the person's information, you see that the information is incomplete for the lead. So you can see over here, I do not know what's the phone for this lead, as well as the title for this lead. So what you can do over here is, in S1, you can create custom publisher actions In this case, what we have created is clean. So if I go and click on the clean button, what this would do is this would match the information that you have with the information which Data.com has. So you can see in this case, we also know about the lead, that we know the title for this lead, we know the phone number, as well as we know the address. So what you can do over here is you can decide to accept these fields, click submit, and as you can see here, your lead record is updated with all the necessary information. So this was essentially a match, and let's see what went underneath over here. So I was matching a contact. So again, it's a REST call. So this is the request I have. I'm matching a Data Cloud contact. That's my attribute. This is the email. This is the first name and the last name. And these are the fields that I'm requesting back in the response. So as you can see here in the response, I got back all the information related to this lead, including the title, email, and whatever fields I had requested. So the third demo we have for you here is account hierarchy using parent HQ, DUNS number. Let me just switch to a tablet mode here. So I'm going to search for a company called BNSF. Going to apply a filter again for the state Texas. So you can see it returned me a set of results. And I'm just going to navigate to the BNSF I'm interested in. This was the one we just purchased. And you can see a button over here which says View Hierarchy. So what this shows you is we compute the hierarchy of this company with all its parents, and you can correspondingly find out all the parent companies for this. So for example, for this, the parent company is Burlington Northern, and eventually all of this rolls up to the parent company, Berkshire Hathaway. So if you're looking to, if your company is doing business with a global company and you're looking for potential opportunities in your area, account hierarchy is a good way to go about doing this. So how did we go about creating this? So I'm going to switch to a new object that was Data Cloud DNB company. Again, it has a set of bunch of fields that are available with this. So this is my query that I'm running, and what this query is doing is it's selecting the object based on the DUNS number, which is the DUNS number of the BNSF railway company that I just displayed. So you can see over here, I came back with a set of results, and they showed me the DUNS number and the parent or the HQ DUNS number. So what I could do over here is, once I get this result set, I could run another query and find out all the records which have the parent or HQ DUNS number with this value. So for example, so you can see, depending on the parent DUNS number, I got a bunch of list of companies. And what you could do going forward with this, you could again follow it in a recursive step and try creating a hierarchy right up to the top. This is what we had for the demo, so I'm going to switch back to the presentation.
Your phone is still, or iPad is still showing.
Oh, okay. So some of the gotchas and limitations before we close. You can match up to 30 records in one batch request when you're using the Data.com matching, that is including the company and the contact. For DUNS right match, we only support up to 10 records in one batch. Again, match calls are REST calls. And we do have these APIs available in the Developer Edition, but there's some gotchas here. Developer Editions do not contain a complete data set, so you may not get a good match on your records. Duns Right Match API is not available for developer editions, as well as your social profile match API. You would realize all the Data Cloud S objects have this field called ID. Do not get carried away by that field. We do not. It's a dummy field, and it would always return the same value. The fields that you're looking for when looking at Data Cloud Company is the company ID, and when you're looking at Data Cloud Contact, it's the contact ID. Some of the, again, covering the limits we have around the APIs, just to point out, Data.com API limits are separate from your Force.com API limits, so there's no confusion there. For search, what we allow is we allow 1,000 requests per user into the number of licenses. So let's say if you had 10 licenses, each user, you would have a total of 10,000 requests per day. There's no limit around the purchase API. For the match, again, we have the same limit over here. That is 1,000 per user into number of licenses you have. So I just want to clarify one thing. When we say number of calls over here, that is not the number of records. It is the number of calls. So your one call, if you're using Duns Right, could have up to 10 records. And because you were allowed 1,000 calls, you could do up to 10,000 records a day. So I think that'll be it. With this, we would like to close the session and open it for any questions and answers.
Hey guys, looks like we're right up against time. They cut the sessions down to 40 minutes. So if you guys want to ask us any questions, we'll be around. But I guess we have to, they're waving to me. It's like, get out.